Welcome, welcome, welcome to this month's Deal Clinic Live. Before we get started, I actually want to say that it's the show's third birthday. We actually started our first episode on the 9th of November 2021. So happy birthday, Deal Clinic Live. Right, now, as we get into it, we have another exciting episode. I'm sure you can see our panelists on the screen here. So we will be recording this. The full version will go out to our YouTube channel, Sourcing Investments Limited. I'll drop the link in the chat box for you so that you can find your way there. There will be snippets of this going out to our other social medias on Facebook and Instagram. Now, please feel free to drop your questions into the chat box. I'll be keeping an eye on those for you and we'll address those to the panel in due course. So there are no silly questions, so feel free to answer those. We do have, back by popular demand, another exciting episode on supported living and the providers, as shown by our newest power team member, MarketOffer, represented today by Andy Fiddler and Paul Roberts. So we also have our resident DJ. We also have our resident investor, Tim Sanders, joining us, the voice of investors for you as well. So thank you for joining live, and also thank you for watching on the replay. Just a brief description about MarketOffer. Andy and Paul, as mentioned last month, have been in business now for a while. We've got a lot of background in business and have worked together previously. And in this project, this business one that they're doing together, they have done more than 100 deals in this strategy alone. So they're very fluent in what is needed in this process. They're helping people with the ins and outs of supported living and social housing, how to transform your property into a hands-off investment, as well as reduce those landlord hassles and make the positive impact whilst increasing your profits by up to 25%. So they're helping landlords, investors, developers, and agents alike to secure supported living and social housing providers. So we're happy to have them with us. And as mentioned, they will be here to answer your questions. We're going to have a recap of what we covered last month. If you haven't seen that episode, feel free to head over to the YouTube channel and watch that episode in full. They will do a recap today, but mainly we're going to do the Q&A. We've got loads of questions that we didn't manage to answer live. And instead of emailing each investor independently, we decided to do part 2 so that we could air those questions and answers for all of you to hear. So it is a great pleasure to hand you over to Andy and Paul.
Hey, nice to meet you guys. As Bonnie said, I'll just give you a quick summary of what we spoke about last week. I won't go into detail, just so that I don't want to repeat what I already talked about. So if I just share my screen. Cool. Yeah, so anyway, yeah, lovely to meet you guys. I suppose just before getting into it and just wrapping up with what Bonnie said there. So me and Paul, we've been in business for the last 20 years each, building businesses across different sectors. I met him when I sold him my recruitment business many moons ago. I suppose our experience or skill set is going into a sector, and one element of it is actually from a marketing context, and being able to create a competitive market around a client's product, and that's what we saw an opportunity for within the supported living and the social housing space. But with that kind of background and knowledge about ourselves, again, if you look at the video from the month before, you'll get a much more in-depth about us if you want to learn about that. So just going into supported living, I'll just shrink this. So again, last month I talked through how to succeed in supported living, and I taught you through in detail the framework that we actually use. And whether if you wanted to do it yourself or if you just want to know how we did it, the three kind of core steps we take to succeed in supported living. I'm not going to go to that detail. However, what you'll see, if I just move this down here, what you'll see on the top right hand corner is a QR code here. If you want to know more information either about supported living, social housing, or about us, if you scan this QR code at any time, it's going to be on each of these pages. It will take you through to the sourcing investments landing page on MarketOffer, and in there you can either upload your property if you wanted to get a lease, but alternatively there's a black button where you can click that and you can join something called the Impact Club. I'll talk about that later, but amongst other things, it will give you a lot of information and advice around supported living. So, starting off, so what is supported living and social housing, and what's the difference? So both of them provide housing to vulnerable people, and largely both of them have their rents underpinned by government funding. Supported living provides both housing and care, and the tenants include people with learning disabilities and autism. And really the aim of supported living is to help people that couldn't otherwise live independently to be able to live independently. Social housing doesn't provide the care, just provides the housing only, and typical tenants would include care leavers, asylum seekers, former homeless, etc. This slide is, sorry, no, sorry. Yeah, sorry guys. So this slide is just really kind of, I suppose, just to illustrate that for many of you would have already heard about commercial leases and experience of commercial leases. Some of you would have already experienced it by owning commercial property yourself. And commercial property, the reason I wanted to start with this slide is that commercial property is actually being one of the core kind of strategies of the super wealthy, pension funds, etc. And these guys, at the point where they saw that commercial property was kind of coming to a bit of a cliff's edge, started to look at what else that they could invest in that would kind of deliver them the same benefits and security of a commercial lease, of secure hands-off income. Sorry, I got a bit distracted. I've had a handyman there. Commercial property is basically been a core part of their investment strategy. As the commercial property hit a bit of a wall, they looked out elsewhere. That's when they, I suppose, discovered supported living and social housing. And I suppose they understood that it had the same benefits of a commercial lease, but with the added benefit of the fact that the rent was underpinned by the government largely. And then over the last kind of 4 to 5 years, landlords and smaller developers have started cotton on to the benefits of supported living, social housing. And even just the last year alone, we've seen a massive uptick. I was actually reading, I think in the paper, in the Guardian today, I don't know if it's from today's article, the last couple of days, about the intentions of the government to sort of build out social rent housing, but the reality is that they don't have necessarily the funding, and the social housing providers don't necessarily have the funding or the capital to actually build houses. So a lot of the actual funding is coming from the pension funds and the super wealthy who are actually buying the property. So it was interesting just reading that this morning, knowing that I was going to be on a call with you guys today. So how does a supported living lease work? So you lease your property to a provider for 3 to 5 years. You get paid every month with no bills and no voids. The provider houses their vulnerable tenants within the property, and then they manage and maintain the property for you. And so, you know, what are the actual benefits? Why should you consider switching to supported living or social housing? And, you know, what are the benefits that this lease brings you? Is you get long-term secure income, you get paid every month, no voids, no bills. It's free maintenance and management. It's a lot less hassle. There's tax benefits on certain types of supported living. The rents are underpinned by government funding largely. And a big thing, again, I talk about this a lot more in the previous video, is, you know, for a lot of people, one of the great things is that you also not only going to be financially potentially better off and time-wise better off, security-wise better off, but you actually are going to be creating a positive impact with your investment, which is, you know, it's a nice kind of positive feeling to be able to walk away with. And then increased profits. We kind of frame up to 25%. That's just to kind of set regular expectations. We say to a landlord, you know, we think we should be able to get you anywhere between, you know, well, zero is in, you know, you just get paid, get the same, but you also get the additional benefits of the fact of it's secure and hands off, all the way up to a 25% increase. However, you know, as you would have seen in last month's video, we do still regularly get people, the case studies included, I think, a 67% profit increase. I think that's where we increase someone's rent by 30%, and then all the additional things such as free maintenance, etc., increase it to 67. Or, you know, I think the other case study was about 40%. So, you know, we do go above 25, but we're just trying to set people's expectations that, you know, even if it is a zero, it's still, from my personal view, a better option versus the private rental market, where you may be a bit fed up with sort of dealing with kind of tenant issues or chasing rents, etc., etc. This is a case study. Again, I won't go into the detail because it's covered in the previous video. But, you know, Kathy is an NRLA landlord that came to us, and she kind of sums it up as, you know, compared to an AST, it's 5 years, not too much worry. She actually had issues with 2 tenants that weren't paying her rent, and it took her ages to get them to be evicted, and even after that they still owed her several thousand. And then you know, she was actually at the point of looking to sell her property when she heard about us through the NRLA. We were able to secure a lease with a charity for her property, who basically pay her every month, look after all the maintenance and management. And, you know, she's a very happy landlord, and she's now got 2 properties with us. So how much do providers pay? This pyramid kind of really sums up nicely the kind of the range. So typically at the bottom of the pyramid, social housing, they pay anywhere between LHA rate and market rate, and then supported living pays anywhere between market rate and up to 30% above market rate. It may kind of look like, okay, well, supported living is the one to go for. Supported living has a more specific requirements around what properties that they're looking for, and they do take longer to, you know, from showing a property before an actual deal can be secured. Social housing takes on a much wider range of properties, and it's much faster turnaround. And, you know, even if you're getting paid below market rate, even an LHA rate, certainly I would say with HMOs, as we kind of illustrated in the video from last month, where you're not having to cover bills or, you know, as well as voids, which are quite common with HMOs, then again, you're still often seeing a profit increase, even if the kind of the initial gross rent is below. So I think both social housing and supported living is a great option. And again, I think we talk about it more in the previous video. I'm obviously biased, but, you know, if you're looking to get a supported living lease or social housing lease, then I would naturally suggest to come via MarketOffer. We are, I should have capped off at the beginning, but we're basically a rental platform that helps landlords and developers secure leases with over 400 different supported living and social housing providers. And we do a whole range of things beyond that. But we, primarily one of the kind of key things is that we help you get the best offer guaranteed from the providers within our network, and we just make it very easy. So you just upload a property, our tech platform does the work, and then also behind the scenes we do that as well. And again, if you scan the QR code in the top right, that'll take you to the sourcing investments page on MarketOffer, and then you can upload a property from there. And then this is what I just spoke about at the beginning. So it could be, we speak to a lot of landlords, they like the idea of supported living, or potentially, you're watching this and you're interested, but you're not too sure, maybe you have some questions or concerns. What I'd recommend is joining the Impact Club. So it's free to join. Again, if you scan this QR code, or if you go to marketoffer.co.uk/SI, that's the source of investments. And then from that, you can click on the black button, sign up, and this is the kind of stuff that you'll get access to. So you'll get access to top supported living deals. I'll show you the types of deals that we have at the moment. Regular, easy kind of how-to guides, and this will get sent into your inbox. Expert tips, advice from supported living providers, and insights from other kind of expert landlords and developers. So I think we're in a really nice position where, yes, we've got great experience, but I think the power of the Impact Club is actually our kind of our network, and being able to leverage our network of the access to all the 400 providers that we've got, all the landlords and developers. There's some great landlords and developers out there with great experience in this, and so we can kind of share that combined knowledge and to help you decide, is it something that's right for you, and if so, we would then, again, in the Impact Club, whether you go through us or not, that it will educate you on how to kind of maximize your profits, etc. Yeah, that's it. I think probably just quickly summarizing the this is the top deals at the moment for the members of the Impact Club. So this kind of just gives you a flavor, potentially, what you could be earning, but also, the benefits of joining. So this is for a block in Sheffield. They're seeking multiple blocks where that you're getting 20% above market rent. And actually, what's very good about this is it's a fully repairing lease. 90% of providers will do what's called an internal repairing lease. So they'll only kind of maintain the internal parts of the property. This is a fully repairing. So actually the uplift you see on that kind of property beyond just a 20% increase in rent is actually quite significant. Again, above market rent in houses in Manchester, 33% above market rent for bungalows in Derbyshire. So that gives you, a flavour of some of the benefits of joining the Impact Club. So yeah, that's me. Just apologies, I did. It was like, I think, is it that Channel 4 when the baby toddler comes along in the background? I had a handyman there sort of knocking on the window, and I was saying I can't speak, but he was very persistent. So I did get distracted or waylaid a little bit in my explanation. Apologies.
No, you're absolutely fine, Andy. This is, it's real life, and this is live. This is what live show is like. So thank you so much for the recap. We already have a couple of questions that have come through. Obviously, we've got a lot of questions that we need to run through that were still carried over from part one. So I'm going to go through what we've got live at the moment, and then if we can recap on the questions that we weren't able to cover in last month's show, that would be amazing. So Olufemi has asked, what type of properties are best suited to supported living?
So do you mean to say that one, Paul, or you
go for it?
Yeah. So really, I think the property needs to be freehold, sharehold freehold, or if it's a flat, it needs to be where the leasehold has permission. So typically it's an older school apartment. and then all of those types of properties are applicable, and then it really does, then it's, you know, which ones are going to get the best rent, and the ones that are in highest demand are blocks and bungalows. They're the ones that get the highest rent from supported living providers. And Paul should probably be able to maybe answer anything more specific around that, or
yeah, no, exactly. With so typically with with the properties, as Andy's kind of outlined, really. So again, there's there's needs that span across a range of different service users, and typically the requirements sort of range, as Andy has outlined. So really there's just a massive need for housing across the UK at the moment. So it may be that for one type of provider, they require, say, a bungalow. For another, it's a one-bed flat. For another, it's a three-bed house. So and again, because we span across so many different areas, there is quite a wide demand. The only things typically that are quite hard to place, I would say, are individual flats that are in a block, and the reason for that is, if you've got a block of 40 flats, and you own one of those flats, it's going to be quite difficult. It's not impossible, but it's going to be a lot harder to place that flat, because typically a provider will want to have the whole block, so they can control people who are accessing that property. Because if you put in, say, a vulnerable adult into a property where there's 40 other sort of people living there, they can't control potential threats and other things. So outside of that, I'd say it's always worth a phone call.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for that. I have another question come in from Lewis. Who is responsible for the boiler if it needs replacing, and is there a break clause?
Sorry, I jumped ahead. You go for do you want to say this?
Yeah. So again, as Andy mentioned, I think when he was showing the one of the deals that we had on the Impact Club, there are providers out there that will offer a fully repairing lease, but typically that only really covers kind of 10% of the market. When it comes to boilers, so if it is an internally repairing lease, and the boiler, the pipe work, the service lines, they're your responsibility, as they would be if you were renting the property to a normal tenant on an AST.
And I would say on that would just be, there is still, even like either providers doing it out of just lack of knowledge, or maybe other types of providers doing it less scrupulously, but they will sometimes people will advertise it as a fully repairing lease, but actually if you look at the terms, it is actually an internal. So yeah, like we've said, 90% of the market is internal repairing leases.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I also have a question from Liz. She wants to know what areas you cover, and do you cover the southeast or just the north?
Do we need to take that, Paul?
Yeah, you go for that one, Andy.
So we cover the we're just in England. We're not operating in Wales or Scotland or Ireland at the moment. And then depending on the area, we take on specific, we have specific requirements. So within Greater Manchester and Liverpool, we'll take on any property type, and the property needs to either be vacant or it needs to be where it's notice given. If it's a block of flats, and the ideal ones are flats of anywhere between 3 one-beds or studios all the way up to sort of 12 or 15 one-bed studios. Not kind of when there's like a 3-bed or a 2-bed, it's kind of makes it quite difficult really for it to work from a supported living point of view. But for a block of flats, we will take that on nationwide across England, and any kind of tenancy status. So whether it's empty, notice given, or it's still tenanted but with the intention that they are wanting to serve notice. Obviously there's a time period on when that can be done with the rent reform bill coming in, and then the last one, yeah, for any other kind of properties that aren't in Manchester or Liverpool, that aren't blocks, so anywhere else in England, any type of property, but it needs to be vacant.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Lewis did ask about the break clause, and I know that we addressed that in part 1. So Lewis, if you do want to watch part 1, Andy and Paul do actually cover that in great detail. But Andy, will you just touch on that for us, please?
Yeah, so we would actually encourage a break. I mean, from our point of view, so we've built our own, and with the help of a lawyer, built our own lease template based on seeing hundreds of different leases. And from our point of view, we actually would encourage a break clause, because you don't really want to be, the marriage should be from the point of, happy and security, and therefore, a break clause gives you guys both chances to work out, one, if are they a good provider, and then gives the provider a chance to work out, are you a landlord that you want to work with? But there's no point in staying together if you don't want to be, it needs to be like a happy marriage. And so we would recommend a break clause. We've got that within our kind of lease template, and it's then down to what you negotiate, and it ranges. Some providers will have like a 6-month rolling break, some will have, you can negotiate a break after a year, so it's pretty negotiable. But some of the big providers are a bit more stricter on that within this, that are maybe ones that operate within the asylum space that you may have already heard. And I'd say the potential problem with that is, one, if you don't like it for any reason, or two, sometimes mortgage providers have, tend to prefer where there is a break clause in place. So we would recommend a break clause.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much. Appreciate you answering that. We have a question from Jonathan, and he's asked, what types of requirements are the providers looking for regarding the supported living? And he's actually asked, like, the things like, do they request wheelchair access, etc., things like that to be considered?
I'll take this one, Andy. So, again, because we like within our network, we've got access to 400 plus providers. So, everyone has kind of different requirements and different kind of expectations. Obviously, properties would need to meet the minimum kind of standards, as they would do with an AST, and then it comes down to who is the provider, and also who is the tenant, because I think if someone's outlined on the chat, it could be that someone requires wheelchair access, so a 1-bed flat with no lift on the 2nd floor is not going to work. So typically providers will work with landlords on on the things that are needed, and are happy to make sort of minor adaptations, which I think is one of the questions that we got from the first round. So they're happy to work with adaptations. They expect the property to be in a good condition, as anyone would, and they expect it to meet the various sort of standard requirements. But outside of that, if there's specific adaptations that can be made to the property to make it right for what the provider needs, then they will work with the landlord on that. In a lot of cases, they will cover the costs if they are sort of minor adaptations.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And I think that touches on one of the other questions that we had with regards to, whether the provider has any requirements prior to any renovation. So that would kind of touch on that, any minor renovations that would need to be done.
Yeah, kind of just following up from that, I think there's maybe like an old misconception that social housing is where landlords would put kind of rubbish stock, and and I think maybe that was in the case in the past, but I think certainly if you the properties landlords that we want to represent, but also I think just generally going forward with how providers operating and the compliance and standards and requirements, is that ideally you need to be coming with a property where it is already a decent living standard. Sometimes if it is not quite that, then the provider can help negotiate, and in some cases they've been able to help sort of take on that work for them, but that's only been where it's kind of minor situations, minor repairs needed.
Yeah, so not huge refurbs. They're going to need it quite rapidly, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, like reading I was reading the press today, and obviously Angela Rayner's, and that, you know, their goal of they're wanting 50% of the properties within the kind of the grey belt to be social rent. But this article is all about how actually the housing associations don't have the capital to actually buy the houses, so they're actually expecting quite a large amount of the properties within the kind of social rent space to come from, you know, your, well, what they were mentioning is, you know, the big super wealthy funds that I was talking about, the BlackRocks, etc. But it's also gives an opportunity to people like, you know, us, who can, you know, help benefit from it too.
Amazing, amazing. And so with that, then we've got a couple of questions with regards to location. So I'm going to amalgamate two questions here. So you operate mainly in Liverpool and Manchester, but do you cover the whole of the UK? And with that, is there a location where supported living property is actually in a greater demand?
Yes, maybe I didn't. I realised that I wasn't super concise with that previous answer. So we do operate across England. It's not just, but within Manchester and Liverpool, we take on properties of tenancy status that are either vacant or notice given. For the rest of England, they need to be vacant, unless, of course, it's a block. And then if it's a block, we will take on any tenancy status, whether it's empty, notice given, or all still tenanted, but with the landlord's intention that he wants to move. So we do operate across England. And then I suppose from a demand perspective, do you mean to answer that, Paul, or do you want to answer that?
Do you want to go for it with demands?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah. So I suppose, I mean, we've got providers across, you know, the whole of England, and more often not a provider. Certainly, we kind of focus on the established providers, you know, where they're turning over, you know, in the millions, tens of millions, you know, or plus. And so these guys are operating across multiple locations anyway. Many of them are operating in the places we don't operate, like Wales and Scotland. But so as far as if there's kind of one particular strong demand over another, I'm going to pass that over to you, Paul. I mean, I think it's really,
that's fine. You know, so I would say we've got really good demand in sort of Manchester and Liverpool at the moment. You know, they are really buoyant areas, you know, for us, where we can, you know, work with a range of stock. And then outside of that, you know, we've got you know, I suppose the easiest way to, you know, to look at it is if it's a you know, if it's an area, if it's a city, you know, with a solid population, that there's going to be a need for you know, for social and you know, and supported living. So I would say Manchester, Liverpool, you know, great areas for us at the moment. But yeah, we do have demand, you know, throughout the UK.
Fantastic. And you mentioned there that you have a lot of demand in Liverpool and Manchester. We have a question that's asked, what's the typical rent that you would get for maybe a 3-bed house?
I mean, a 3-bed, and again, you know, I think, you know, how much would it cost to rent a 3-bed, you know, 3-bed house in Manchester? I think, again, it depends on the postcode, the quality of the property, and that kind of stuff. So, you know, a 3-bed house in Manchester, we recently, I think it was you know, an M20 postcode. I think we leased that property for around £1,200 a month, I think it was. And that was to a provider that specialises in care leavers. I think market rent, you know, was around £100 less than that. So I think market rent was around 1,100 for that property. We managed to achieve 12, and then obviously the provider was then taking on, you know, all of the maintenance, and there were no voids and everything else. So that's just one example. But again, you know, if you're looking at a property that's in M1, it's in central Manchester, then you know, we're talking about a completely different rent. So you know, it all depends, varying on postcode. But again, if you go back onto the platform, what you can do, part of the sign up process is you will put your postcode in, and it will actually sort of outline whether there is demand in that area, and then we can quickly come back to you with you know, the rents that we should be able to achieve.
so
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Go on, Andrew.
And I suppose if you're kind of in this kind of initial assessment stage, maybe you're not quite there yet, or decided whether you want to do it. I think what we kind of typically say to our landlords is to say, kind of set your expectations that we can get you, market rent. You will then obviously get an increase in profit because you've got the free maintenance, the free tenant management, no voids, as well as the kind of a lot less hassle. So that should give you a profit uplift anyway. There's going to be a chance that we can increase your rent potentially quite significantly, but that again depends on what your property is and where it is, and then, but even if you were to get, LHA rates, below LHA rates, depending on the terms of the lease and what your property is, that's not bad either. It can still, if you actually work out the numbers all the way down, not just the top line revenue, again, it still can be where you get an increase in profit, but ultimately no one's moving to us for less money. Everyone that comes to us is where they are making more money. So just a rough rule of thumb is work out what the market rent is for your property in your area, expect to get that, plus the fact you're going to get free maintenance and no voids, and that's probably a nice simple way of working out.
Definitely, and I'll thank you for that. It's you mentioned something really key there about looking at the other numbers and not just the top line, because with everything that you're able to negotiate, so Andy and Paul are actually able to negotiate because of how many deals they've done, the relationships that they've built with these providers. They're able to secure, as you saw in the recap there, able to secure better rates than if that individual went and tried to source that kind of strategy independently. And then when you take into consideration the lease option, the lease that they're generating and able to secure for you, as well as mitigating and minimizing the voids, it does actually work out to be a lot more profitable. And remember, this isn't just a 12-month rental cover. You're looking at potentially 3 to 5 years, if not longer. So there's a lot of profit to be made with that in consideration. We have another question with regards to requirements. Are there, you've mentioned requirements already, but is there a minimum standard from a viewpoint? I mean, obviously it needs to be livable. They need to be able to walk in pretty much immediately if that property is available. But is there like a minimum standard that these providers look for?
I mean, minimum. I think we covered the kind of minimum requirements in that they'll look at, kind of it all depends on the property and everything else. I mean, I think to expand upon that a little bit more, especially maybe for some of the listeners, and also to cover off one of the questions I think that came up. That came up in the last episode, I think was just talking about requirements for HMOs, because I think there's a lot of HMO landlords out there with properties and wondering, will this work? So again, with HMOs, and we get asked that question a lot. Will you look at HMOs? You talk a lot about one-bed flats. What about HMOs? I've got 15 of them. So typically for us at the moment. So and again, when we split this across sort of social housing and supported living. So, typically providers like houses between kind of 4 and sort of 6 beds. Sometimes we can go a little bit higher. But that tends to be the kind of sweet spot for us. And then with social housing, effectively the provider is, the provider underpins I suppose the financial guarantees on the property. They're looking after the maintenance, but effectively they're housing a tenant, and then that tenant, because they don't have any additional needs, they're able and they're expected to look after the property and clean it and treat it like their home, which they do in most cases. So in that sense, they with social housing, they like HMO properties where there's an ensuite. So each service user has access to their own bathroom and everything else. Whereas with supported living, it's slightly different. So with supported living, they have a different kind of need. So within supported living, they like properties where because effectively supported living, there's going to be a a team of people that are looking after the service users, tenants effectively. So there needs to be a downstairs toilet, because we can't expect staff to come in and then, you know, use one of the tenants' rooms to go to the toilet. So, you know, in an ideal case, they like a 6-bed, you know, HMO, or 5-bed HMO where you know, where there's a toilet downstairs, and also there's some communal space. So, you know, when they're meeting with tenants, or maybe there's you know, some group activities that they're doing, they like a communal area, you know, so they can you know, run those sessions, and also so they can, you know, effectively work out there as an office if need be. The other thing is that you know, whereas say for social housing they really like ensuite bathrooms, for supported living, not necessarily as much so. So they will consider them, but it adds an additional cost, because, you know, effectively with a lot of their service users, they're having to cover the cost of the cleaning of the property and everything else. So and they're going to have to go into each individual room. So, you know, if it's ensuite bathrooms, then, you know, they're going to have to cover the cost of the cleaning of those bathrooms. They're going to have to gain access and everything else. So, you know, social housing really like ensuite bathrooms. You know, they like communal space, but it's not as much of a big thing for them. Whereas, you know, with supported living, they're happy if it's a 6-bed HMO with 2 bathrooms for the service users, stroke tenants, and then a downstairs toilet for the staff, and a communal space. That's typically what they would look for. So, you know, it varies, you know, based on the providers.
Thank you so much for that, Paul. And did you have anything to add for that?
I would just say that, you know, if you don't have that, doesn't mean that you can't get something. It just, you know, that's kind of like ideal layouts. Social house, you know, within the social housing, if you've got an ensuite, then you can sometimes get the equivalent of like a 1-bed LHA rate per HMO room, you know, which kind of gives you, you know, an overall, you know, much better increase in rent. But other than that, no, I would go with what Paul was saying.
Amazing, amazing. We've had a question from Simon who wants to know if these providers actually accept lease option properties, obviously with permission from the freeholder.
We personally wouldn't, just because in the same way that we wouldn't accept, we wouldn't work with someone on a who's got a rent to rent either, and that's just personally because we would want to know that the security is 100% there. One of the things that we do is we've come into this space, and rent, you know, getting the best rents is one, and the other thing is security, is, you know, making sure that you know, you've got the best providers that are going to look after your property, but also we honor it to both sides. And so from a rent to rent perspective, we don't want to have that security pinned down onto a rent to rent company that may go down. And I appreciate lease options. You know, we've been involved in lease options ourselves separately from this space. Isn't, you know, strictly a rent to rent, but it's still kind of there's a bit of a weakness within the chain. So we personally wouldn't, but it doesn't mean that, you know, if you went direct to provider, they wouldn't. But you may struggle to explain a lease option to probably quite a few providers, because they are probably, you know, they're looking after their care providers first, you know, more than property people, if that you know, than property investors, you know, type thing. So short answer for us, no, unfortunately, sorry, but it doesn't mean you can elsewhere, but I haven't known of it.
No, that's great. Thank you for that. And I love that they are social first. So we're really looking here to add value to the communities and the people that really need that additional support. We've got a question with regards, because you did mention HMOs here. So 2 questions that have come in. Do you need a license for a HMO as government use, but also can this work in Article 4 areas, gentlemen?
Sorry, what was the first part of the question?
Do you need a license for a HMO as a government use?
Yeah, so there's, and apologies if I get this wrong, but I know there is with an HMO, because you've got C4, you've got, sorry, is it C3B, C3? There's if care is provided and it's in an Article 4, I think there's a potential loophole where you're able to operate an HMO in an Article 4 if there's actual care provided. We haven't. I remember hearing about this a long time ago. We haven't personally ever come across that. So everything that we've operated in, it's been where there's an HMO license. You know, has it's already an operating HMO. It's got no issues with getting an HMO license, planning permission, and everything's fine. But I know there is, but I don't know whether it's in the licensing or it's in the planning. There's some sort of not loophole, but there's some sort of way around it. But that would be not social housing. That would be supported living where there's care is provided.
Okay, thank you.
I think with with HMOs, I think that again, if it's social housing, effectively it's just you're providing housing. It's the same kind of license. Whereas if there's care, then again it would be a different classification. And as such, you could then potentially get round you could get round Article 4. But again, and that will be a case of speaking to the council and just having that conversation, because effectively you're providing a valuable service for that, for that community. And if there is an Article 4 in place, that's typically because there's too many HMOs in that area. But again, you're providing a different type of housing, so it's well worth a conversation just to see where they stand on that.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you for that, gentlemen. So it is very much, from what I'm gathering, based on part 1 and these Q&A here in part 2, is that it's very much a case by case. It's not a one size fits all. It is definitely case by case, depending on what property is needed, what property can be provided, and what's the need of the client more than anything that we're actually providing.
And all the there's so many different councils out there, across the UK. And for one council, they might be really pro HMO, and another council might not be, dependent on what the needs are. So councils want one thing. I was speaking to a provider the other day. He was looking for a block of flats, and he wants big rooms. He wants parking. He wants outdoor space, and he wants communal areas. But he said that's an ideal. That's what the council want. They want those 4 things. But effectively they need the housing. So if we've only got one of those things, it's still worth a conversation and just to kind of see where they sit on it. So I would say that it's always worth having the conversation.
Yeah, and I would kind of wrap that up by saying, obviously, we've gone into detail around answering people's specific things, but there's such a huge demand across, the whole of the UK, that I think really whatever property you have, with the exception of it just being a one-off flat, but anything like a house or HMO or block of flats, etc., bungalow, then there's gonna be demand pretty much for your property wherever it is in the UK. So if it fits our requirements, definitely get in touch, upload your property and we can have a conversation. Or if you just want to learn more, just join the Impact Club, and we answer all of this kind of stuff all the time in that.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to crack on with some more questions. I'm conscious of the time, and I still want to come to Tim. From your experience, we've had a question. You mentioned there about uploading your property. How long? What's the kind of time frame that we're looking at from when maybe somebody uploads their property for you to check, and then actually moving through to leasing? What's that time frame looking like?
Right. So I'll answer that one. So for social housing, typically it's these are averages, right? So it's probably 2 to 4 weeks. Can be quicker in some rare cases. It can be slightly longer in some rare cases, and that's because the rates are typically predetermined. We know what the demand is. It's a quicker process. With supported living, because there's various departments, you've got you've got the care provider that's got to visit the property, and the local commissioner will have to sign off on that property as well. like that takes a bit longer. So that could be anywhere from sort of 4 to 12 weeks. But within that kind of time frame, and we have had, just to completely be honest, I mean, we've had occasions where it's been longer than that. The reason for that is just the number of people that then need to sign off on on that property to make sure it's right. Because in some cases, we're housing some people that have got some really complex needs. But again, it doesn't mean that you won't hear anything throughout that whole process. So it could be that we're able to give you some pricing, and we're able to answer some of your questions. So it won't be a case it's going to take you 12 weeks to get a yes or a no. We'll be able to update you as the situation kind of progresses. But that's the kind of lead time you're looking at in order to from initially uploading your property to somebody moving in.
Was that just me? But Paul froze. I don't. Was that the same for you? So you guys all heard that answer? Did you?
We heard.
Okay,
we heard everything. We heard
Oh,
everything.
okay, perfect. It was my internet then. I was worried that it kind of missed out just on the yeah. And I think
I think your handyman Andy has pulled out your internet connection after you snubbed him earlier on the call.
I'm worried that he's sat outside the front door just trying to get in. But the yeah, and I think just I think in case you said this, Paul, I missed it because it froze. But our goal is to get you guys an indicative offer, as quick as possible, so you at least get an idea and a sense of, okay, is this something that that works. But from that point, right from the beginning, when you upload a property, we have a chat and say, okay, what's the minimum rent that you would accept? And so everyone's on the same page. We're not going to go out looking for a property unless it's something that kind of works for you guys. And so, yeah.
Amazing.
I think this is actually a good time for me to jump in a little bit here, because on exactly that subject, we've got a bungalow that we have within my family just at the end of our road here, and it was a bungalow that my gran used to live in, and we now rent it out for not patients but tenants with medical conditions. And our last tenant was an MS tenant. So he was in there for about 5 years. And we had the whole thing changed for wheelchair access, had the floors redone, which was perfect. But he had to then move out because he needed further care. He needed round-the-clock care. So we started looking, and actually I've been speaking to Paul in the background about this. We started looking about what we could do with supported living needs with this place, because it's perfectly adapt to these kind of things. And in the meantime, we've had an elderly gentleman come to us who's about 92, who needs a 6-month tenancy because his place has been flooded. So he's going to move into the bungalow. Well, at the moment he's just moved in, and about two or 3 months into that tenancy, we're going to be talking further with Paul to then say, right, okay, let's start the process going on how we can get someone else in on a full supported living contract. And so we're filling that void of how long it might take to get that done with a short-term tenant who needs exactly the property we've got, which is a wheelchair accessible bungalow. And he's happy. His problem solved, our problem solved, and we can also start to bring something back for the community. So there are definitely ways around working on the sort of 2 to 3 month timescale to fill that void if the void is an issue for people.
Thank you for sharing that, Tim. I think that's really important because that's a real life, very current situation. And so that really highlights the capacity or the ability for, Andy and Paul to be able to leverage properties for the benefit of those clients or those people out there that really, really need somewhere, whether it be, as you mentioned, maybe 3 months or even longer. And so we're filling in and plugging in those gaps and able to touch lives that are impacting in a really powerful way. So thank you for sharing that. With regards to, gentlemen, we had a question from the last month's episode, and it was really around finance. And is there any finance for setting up social housing and supported living? And do you help with that, actually?
Do you mean to answer that, Paul?
No, that's fine, Andy. I can take that. So no, effectively, you know, we're set up really to help find housing for, you know, established existing providers. So that's not an area where we've got that kind of expertise. There's plenty of really great companies out there, you know, that are able to, you know, sort of help people who are looking to get into the sector. But for us at the moment, you know, our aim is on sort of helping the existing providers that are out there to get the housing that they so desperately need.
Amazing. Thank you so much. We had a question from last month, which was regards to rent, and I would consider that very similar to leasing back, you know, and lease options. Is that right, or would you consider rent options again? I think it's very similar to, we've already touched on it.
Yeah, we wouldn't be able to. I suppose the other thing to kind of add around rent is it's getting you'll see it popping up in the school, the kind of property schools a lot more. And I think for us, we don't work with it just from a security point of view, so we want to have the relationship directly with the landlord, and so does the providers. There, from a rent to social housing, typically they work with a few of the kind of the major kind of asylum seeker providers, but from what I understand, there's a directive from the government that they don't, because of the security issue, they're not necessarily wanting these providers to work with them either. And then I think the other kind of thing, more from a values perspective, is to kind of say I think rent to rent's great for people that want to get into the business and they're looking to operate, you know, do a great offering. I know there's bad names for certain types of rent to rent companies, but I think the value is in the private rental sector, where what they're doing is they're going in, taking on the risk of the fluctuations of rent and voids, or in Airbnb, say, and that's what they're providing as a service to the landlord. Whereas for rent to rent social housing, I don't think it quite makes sense, because the guarantee is already being provided by the social housing or the supported living provider. So all it is really just taking a large margin, and we obviously charge fees. But when we came into this space, we were like, okay, well, where's the opportunities, where's the problems, who are we looking to solve a problem for? And we're looking to help landlords, so we purposely said, right, let's make landlords our customers. We want to represent them, therefore we're going to charge them, and we're completely transparent. Because we're charging them, they know we're, you know, that we're on their side. And I think there's that kind of old adage, if you're not paying, then that means you're the product. And so I think in the space of rent to rent social housing, where they're not providing the additional service of that security around, you know, the rent's already guaranteed. Their motivation is just then to negotiate you down as much as possible to make the biggest margin as much as possible for them, whereas we're incentivized to get landlords the highest rate. So yeah, so no, unfortunately for us.
Thank you for that. And I love the distinction there, whereby you're actually in place to negotiate and navigate a better result, not just for the investor, or not just for the tenant, the new tenant that's actually in need of this place, but it is actually a whole win-win-win. It's very holistic. It's a full win-win-win, 360 degrees win for everyone, the way that you operate through MarketOffer. That really comes across. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on. Sorry, Andy, go for it.
I was going to say, yeah. So I mean, like with anything, you know, we are a two-way marketplace, but ultimately, when it comes down to it, we represent the landlord's interests. You know, that's why we've chosen to charge them, and you know, that's ultimately who we represent. But we want everyone to be happy along the chain.
Amazing. And you mentioned there about your well, you mentioned charge, you didn't mention your fees, but is that a bespoke thing? Is that something that actually people should come and you know, visit your site and have that separate conversation, or
I can
a flat rate fee that you charge?
Yeah, it's specific set fees. Do you mean to talk them through now?
You can do, if you're happy to do
that. I mean, I don't want to kind of bore people with a sales pitch. If you'd rather not, it's like if you have more kind of valuable, or you know, if someone's more inquisitive about other questions, and feel free. Or if you want us to talk through that, then I know.
You can do. We're at 1 o'clock, so I'm very conscious of time. So if it's going to be a quick 5 minutes, then
Yeah, sure. Okay,
okay.
yeah. So, I suppose because I saw that question last month, and I think the question was, why are you charging fees? I thought it was meant to be hassle free, and I think that's a fair question. I think, I suppose, in reflection, I think supported living social housing is low hassle. It's not hassle free. I think the service that we look to provide it is to make it even more hands off and less hassle. But I suppose the reality with life, there's nothing, nothing is going to be completely hassleless. And so, like we've talked about, there's 90% of providers come with an internal repairing lease. Even if they say it's a fully repairing, generally, if you look at the terms, it's actually internal. And so what that means is they'll do anything internal up to a kind of a handyman level, or the structure, the boilers, damp, all of that type of stuff would be the landlord's responsibility, and any kind of replacements of installations. And that kind of sounds like all the expensive stuff is down to you as a landlord, but actually where a lot of the cost gets eaten up if you do like a P&L on your property, and that the both cost and time it's those maintenance, and it's those checks, call out fees, etc. So the provider is still taking up that benefit and reducing those costs. And then what we do, and what when we kind of came into this space, is we said, okay, well, there's actually over 1,000 providers here, but landlords tend to be only working with a few. And out of those providers, like with any sector, there's some good players and there's some bad players. And so as a result, many landlords aren't really getting the maximum rent that they could be getting. And maybe they're getting negotiated down by providers or by rent-to-rent companies. Or in some cases, there's bad actors in the space, and there's horror stories of situations where providers or rent-to-rent companies are going down, or the property's been left in a bad position. So we kind of wrote down, right, what's all the problems, how can we create a solution for this? And our first plan, which is a fully managed offering, this is what we launched, and it was specifically for your kind of investor that valued time massively, really wanted a hands-off solution. And then we've also now built a kind of a lease light offering, and that's more for your kind of self-managed landlords, developers who've got their own team in place, don't mind taking on the landlord's responsibilities, and managing the provider. And then if you want, I can quickly just show you the kind of the pricing plan. Is that of interest or not, and what we would cover? Or do you want me just to summarize it?
It's up to you, Andy.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, we can just touch on it. That's fine. And then I just want to double check if the rest of the gentlemen are good.
Yeah, okay, cool. So so if you go to this page, you can kind of see, so just click on price and you can see everything we do. That we've actually got 3 plans. This kind of central plan, this is our fully managed offering. This is the lease light for the self-managed. Ultimately, our goal is to, make you the most amount of money possible, get you the best offer guarantee from our network of 400 providers. We will then, once you've got that set up, we'll help you select and vet the right provider. We provide a full credit report and then ongoing credit monitoring. And then once you've selected the right provider, we'll help you negotiate the key terms in place. We've got our own lease template. We can't act as your lawyers or be your legal advisors, but we know and have the relationships to negotiate the key things that will either maximize your profit or add sort of additional security for your property. And then once that's in place, we've got our own rent collection platform and credit control team to ensure that you're getting paid on time. And then for the fully managed people, we go that step further, where we will manage the provider, oversee the provider, ensure that they're delivering, and we'll also manage your kind of property and landlord responsibilities. So we do a schedule of condition at the beginning of the lease, end of the lease. We check the property every 6 months and just ensure the provider is delivering as agreed and the property is being maintained. If anything that the provider needs to do, we'll bring that up and make sure they do that. And if either something we spot or they spot that is the landlord's responsibility, our contractors will go in and do it. And wherever possible, we'll push back and say, hey, Mr. Provider, based on the terms, this is actually your responsibility to do. So we've got plenty of kind of case studies where we've saved landlords lots of money by pushing it back to the provider. And so that's our kind of fully managed option. The lease light, if you kind of scroll down, you can see it all broken down in detail. But the lease light, it's not just a kind of we're not just sourcing you a deal and forgetting about it. So we do all the things I talked about up to here, best offer guarantee, blah blah blah. Help you sort out the leases, but at the point of where we would then start managing the property and the provider, where you do that yourself, we're still going to be here in the background. And in the rare case that you ever have a dispute, we would also provide sort of dispute mediation. So we want you to be happy no matter what plan you work with us. We want the providers to be happy, and we want the end tenant to be happy as well. So we're always in the background there for you.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Andy. I think we've actually covered all the questions that came in from last month that we couldn't cover in part 1, and we've gone through the questions that we've had come in through today. So I want to Tim, before we go end, was there anything else that you wanted to ask the gentleman at all?
I think everything's been basically covered. In terms of running over, I think the only things I have are small, so I think most things have been covered. I just wanted to mention that I've said before, I've been chatting with Paul in the background about the bungalow at the end of the street here, and also about one of my other small buy-to-lets that I've got, a little end terraced. And Paul's been brilliant, constantly getting back to me, constantly giving me updates of information. So it's looking very promising on that point. And also for the current management agent that we have on the bungalow down here, for a price comparison, we're paying 15% plus VAT for that management agent, which is a lot. It's a family connection, so it's higher. It's a sort of more expensive company than normally most people would go to. Normally you'd be spending about 10 to 12% plus VAT. So in terms of the fees that MarketOffer are talking about, it's significantly reduced. So from that point, I just wanted to do a comparison there. But just to say, I've uploaded onto the MarketOffer website, very easy, no issues, super quick, and so far I highly recommend it.
Appreciate that, Tim.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Amazing. I really appreciate that, gentlemen, and thank you for sharing that, Tim. And I think the usability of a platform needs to be really easy to navigate. The team laugh because if Bonnie Marshall can get it, a 6-year-old can get it. Tim's laughing. So that's really important, that it is easy to navigate. And so I'd just like to mention that to the investors or the agents that want to, dip into this and really start to be able to maximize their ability to provide value to their clients, that this is something that's easy to, the platform is easy to use. It is very straightforward. As I said, if I can do it, anyone can do it. So I really thank Tim for bringing that to light. With regards to the episode, I'm just going to share with you the platform itself so that you can see how to find MarketOffer. When you go to the platform, you can hover over either investors and you'll see the Power Team dashboard there, or if you're an agent, you'll see the Power Team dashboard there. Once you click into that, you'll be able to find MarketOffer. They are actually on the Power Team dashboard. And this is the Power Team dashboard here. So you scroll down slightly, you'll literally click in here. This is what you have available to you. You can have the free download, or you can get a lease. And so once you click into the learn more, you'll be able to then connect with either of the gentlemen. But as Andy has mentioned already, you can join the Impact Club, where Andy and Paul and the team give a lot of information and a lot of support.
And sorry, sorry to jump in, that free guide, I need to have that button updated, but we've taken the guide and split it out across the Impact Club, so you don't get you get that information as a guide split out over a couple of days in a more kind of digestible way. And then, so maybe one more thing to add. Sorry, I appreciate that some of you guys watching this will be agents, and we actually have like an agent and introducer offering as well. So if you are potentially, wanting to get involved in this, and be an agent on our platform, then please get in touch. Probably the easiest way would be support@marketoffer.co.uk.
Thank you so much. Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much for that. Gentlemen, I want to thank you again for your time, your energy, and the value that you've brought. Tim, again, thank you for your presence, helping me co-host with this episode. Andy and Paul, if you have any closing statements to make, feel free to do so now.
I mean, I would just say, look, obviously, we're biased in talking about MarketOffer, but I would say, irrespective whether you come with us or not, I think supported living, social housing is a massive opportunity for all of us. I think it gives you that benefits of secure income. It is a lot less hassle, and so I would definitely invite you to explore it, more. Whether it's with us or someone else, I think it's a great opportunity.
No, that's great. And yeah, my closing remark would just be thanks for the was it 20 odd participants that have managed to stay logged in for an hour and 10 minutes while we barbled through all of those questions. So yeah, thanks for everybody.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, Andy and Paul. And actually, with regards to our live viewers, I'd just like to give a shout out. So B, Dale, Jeff, Jane, another Jeff, Jonathan, Quark, Liz, Lewis, Mark, Murdell, Olufemi, Pauline, Rochelle, Sierra, Simon, Vasca, and William. I want to thank you for attending live. And for all of those of you that will watch this on the replay, it will be available in approximately about a week's time on our YouTube channel, Sourcing Investments Limited. I thank you also. So with that, without further ado, thank you to all of you, all of our viewers, for your consistent and steady support. We're so grateful that you've been with us for the last 3 years. We're happy to keep going. And we love the fact that you've reached out and said that we add value. That's the main thing for these shows. So Tim, Paul, and Andy, thank you. And to all of our live viewers, we'll see you next month.